Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back for yet another round of the Day 9 Q&A session. I'm Sean, Day 9 Plot. And the way this works is that you ask a question down in the comments section, and whatever one gets liked to the top, I will take those top questions and answer them in the next week's Q&A. I was a little late this week because I went to Maryland and I got to touch the Washington Monument, which was pretty cool because I've played Fallout 3 and I know that snipers live up there. But I made it out alive, and of course, though late, I'm always back and willing to answer questions. So let's go ahead and take a few of those. First question from Proletariat12, who says, does Zerg have enough options and versatility, or do they need the lurkers back to be equal to the other races? Now, I'm going to ignore the second part because it would be pure speculation about the lurkers. I don't know how a lurker would feel in StarCraft 2. But let's address that first part about the options and versatility. Because right now, a lot of players are feeling like Zerg are limited. They hit layer, and then they're either making a bunch of roaches or hydras. And that's basically it, right? You have some big, bulky army. Sure, you can get some mutalisks, but you come back to something a little bit stronger, a little bit more meaty. And then you can get other things for support, like infestors. But especially in that mid-game, you feel a little bit locked into an army. And you especially feel locked into just sitting and defending your expansions, and that's that. And of course, players will contrast this with the other two races. Terran have Reapers and Medivacs, and they can do a lot of cloak harass, and they have the Vikings that can bounce in and drop and run back, and tanks are good at controlling space. And they think about Protoss with warping in and warp prisms and the force fields and all the cool stuff you can do with that, and the fact that there are these three different tech trees, the robotics facility, the Stargate, the Twilight Council, and Zerg's been feeling a little bit closed off. But I want to assure you, I'm confident that is because people are not exploring some obvious options. For instance, 2 hours ago, I watched some brilliant Infestor play by a very strong Zerg player who shall remain nameless because I don't want to spoil anything. But the Zerg player was getting Infestors on Lost Temple, and when the Terran player dropped his high ground, I thought, well, he's done. He didn't have Mutalisks, he doesn't have drop. What did this player do? He launched Infested Terrans up onto the high ground, and I thought, oh my god, the Infested Terran is something that I forgot could cover range. So all of a sudden, if there's a canyon and there's tanks shooting at you, you can just launch infested Terrans over there. That gives a lot more options for just staying alive with the infestors. Or for instance, Nidus Worms haven't been used at all for Zerg, really. Sure, sometimes people will use them for the occasional cheesy huge attack, but players aren't regularly just getting a Nidus network and actively trying to do more and more Nidus Worms around the map. Perhaps Nidus Worming to another main just to create extra attack and movement paths, or even set up an easier expansion. And I think that Zerg players have been just so close-minded and focusing on that strong mix because the strong mix of roaches and hydras is just good. There's no reason to deviate away from it until players start losing or feeling cramped. And because that feeling is emerging right now, I'm sure that naturally the responses will be to open up the game as time progresses. So the next question from SheaZcorp is, if 2v2 makes its way onto the professional scene, would you play 2v2 competitively? And if so, who would you choose to be a long-term partner and why? So I don't really know if I would play 2v2. I would need someone who I really trust, though, as a player, not to argue, really, because you'll hear me say a lot, learning doesn't happen in-game. You don't sort of play a game of StarCraft and in the middle go, oh, I guess I know what I should do. In between games, you look back and say, you know what, I really should have done this, or I really should have done that. And I'm going to flick this fly away because it's been in my room for ages. But I will kill it after this Q&A. But a really important thing is that you sit down and discuss a lot of plans, because if you don't have a good discussion, like if you don't have Ventrilo open or some good means, a lot of times you'll have these impulse things where you'll say, oh my god, I'm getting attacked, help, help, help me, oh my god. And really, the more cool-headed decision would be, you know what, I'll just defend, you counterattack, or something like that. So it would be a lot of communication, a lot of comfort, and most importantly, being comfortable with the idea that you may have lost the game because of your opponent or because of your partner. That is huge. You need to be cool with the idea that some games will be lost and it won't be your fault, and that you just gotta not be that concerned about that. Because I remember in some of the clan leagues I play in StarCraft, people would sort of mishmash good 1v1 players together into a 2v2 team, and they would just bomb and hate each other, and I actually had one player leave the team because of this huge fight that happened, and it's just not necessary at all. Sometimes losses just happen in 1v1s. Gotta have that same attitude in 2v2s. So, last question by DontFearGrim says, will StarCraft 2 have the same longevity as StarCraft 1? Will the lower skill cap hurt what longtime StarCraft fans think of it? I absolutely disagree that there's a skill cap in StarCraft 2 that's super low. In fact, it's like the opposite of true. StarCraft 2 is really hard. I mean, in fact, I think it might be even more technically demanding than StarCraft 1. Sure, you can select everything in one control group, and that feels nice, and sure, you can select multiple buildings at once, but now you have to worry about your units clumping because they're in one control group. You got to force them to kind of spread apart. Now you have to worry about constantly going back to Chrono Boost or Mule, or especially with Zerg with the Larva Vomit. God, that takes up a lot of time. And there's so many weird, obnoxious strategies, and air units do so much damage to ground. There's just a lot to think about. But the one thing that makes me think that StarCraft 2 will have a lot of longevity, whether it's as long as StarCraft 1 or not, I mean, who knows, but what will really help a lot is that StarCraft 2 is being released in 3 parts. So that means that Blizzard will have the opportunity to rebalance or introduce new units over time, and they'll have all the dedication they need to put in more hours to make our game cooler and cooler and cooler. So thank you, Blizzard, for making an awesome game. And I did want to briefly, because Lone Sword Spartan asked what I thought about Real ID. I'll answer this, and then I'll go. I mean, I answered this a little bit in the middle of Day 9 Daily number 152 that you can get at day9tv.blip.tv. But I'm real not comfortable with the idea of posting with my real name. And like, I say my name's Sean Plott all the time. I can even tell you it's spelled Plott. Right? I genuinely don't care if you guys know. But what I don't want to have happen is someone be able to just like Google me to pieces. That it feels kind of weird. I probably wouldn't be posting there. It makes sense to me why Blizzard would do that, because it's so much easier to moderate if you can hold people accountable. Oh my god, that's so much easier. But I'm still a little bit... I kind of like the fact that I can be Day 9 on the internet, or Strider Doom, or something like that. So I'm real curious how that's going to turn out. I'm a little about it right now. I'm going to see how that turns out. Because as long as it's not like everywhere in the universe, I'm cool. As long as it just stays on one forum I'm never going to post on, it's fine by me. So with that, that wraps up this good old Q&A session. Post your extra questions down there, and I shall answer it next week. And until then, peace out. Go over here and stop the recording right now. Bam.